Solo mining is the embodiment of the original dream, a defiant act of individual sovereignty where one person, one node, and one miner take a stand against centralized control. We don't just mine for profit, we mine for principle. We mine for ourselves and for each other and for the unyielding spirit at Bitcoin's core. Join us as we dig in and hold the line. This is the Home Mining Podcast. Hello, Bitcoin home miners. Two Sats here, and I want to give a quick thank you to our sponsors before we jump into another amazing episode here on the Home Mining Podcast. First up, if you want to stack sats the right way in the US or Canada, you've got to check out today's sponsor, Bitcoin Well. It's a fully non-custodial platform. It's straight to your own wallet using on-chain or Lightning. They never custody your funds. That's the way it should be. So use our link to join Bitcoin Well. You'll also earn bonus points with every Bitcoin buy you make when you sign up using our link. And those points are actually redeemable for coin tosses into their Bitcoin wishing well, which gets you free sats. You can even win up to 1 million sats in the wishing well, which is amazing. Or you can save up your points and use them for a Bidax Gamma from Satoshi. So just go ahead and scan the QR code on the screen or hit the link in the description and join me on Bitcoin Well to start stacking sats today. Now, during this episode, have your Lightning wallets ready because we'll also be giving away some free sats courtesy of Bitcoin Well. And if you're ready to go ahead and start your Bitcoin home mining journey with us, go ahead and grab a Bidax Gamma or a NerdQX++ from the Satoshi store using our link or by scanning the QR code you see on the screen now. Listeners of the Home Mining Podcast that use this link have access to an exclusive discount code. All you got to do is go to the store using our link, put whatever you want in your cart, and when you go to checkout, use code 2SATS, the number 2, SATS, and you can snag yourself a nice little discount on your purchase. We really appreciate you supporting the podcast. I know you're going to enjoy this episode, and let's dig in to this next episode. Hello and welcome back to the Home Mining Podcast by Satoshi. I'm your host, 2Sats, and today I'm joined by your friend Andy, who many of you I'm sure will know from X as well as YouTube. He's a very prominent content creator in the mining space. He runs a very popular YouTube channel with over 120,000 subscribers, and he shares educational content on passive income strategies and Bitcoin mining and cryptocurrency mining in general. And today, really excited to have him on so we can deep dive into all things Bitcoin mining, passive income strategies, hardware, and more. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. One of my favorite topics.
Yes, man. You have so many great posts out there, and anybody listening to this that mines Bitcoin at home or is in the mining space on Twitter, there's definitely a lot of naysayers out there, people that don't really understand the underlying strategies or reasons why somebody might want to mine Bitcoin at scale. A lot of talk about it being super unprofitable, but your posts always do a great job of highlighting that that is not the case and that there is a long-term strategy to this. And so do you maybe want to give us just a bit about who you are and your origin story, and then we'll jump right into that sort of topic right there.
Yeah, so I've been in crypto technically since 2014. I got kind of caught up in the idea of making passive income, from a computer or whatever. And my first introduction was like finding out about Litecoin mining, sorry, at the time. And I actually built a 4 GPU rig in a milk crate at my house, running Linux, trying to figure out like how to do this mining thing. I wasn't quite exposed to Bitcoin yet. And I was also working at a software startup at the time, like 14 plus hour days. So I'd come home and the rig would be offline or whatever. I was beating my head against the wall trying to figure this thing out, trying to make this magic passive income money machine, money printer work at my house. And that was my first touch into it. A little bit later, I bought my first little bit of Bitcoin. But largely I was kind of just on the periphery of this stuff until 2017. And I just kept hearing about Bitcoin over and over and over again. And I was like, okay, maybe there's something here. So I started investigating and I got pretty into it in 2017. Of course, Bitcoin hit an all-time high at that time of 20,000. I was like, we're going to the even higher, to the moon. That was the moon at the time. We crashed down. And in 2018, 2019, that is when, most people who were there for the hype of 2017 or the altcoin season of 2018 all left, gave up, and I stuck around because I just thought there's something to this. I keep seeing it pop up. Um, we live in a digital world. Looking back into the late 90s and the dot-com immersion and bubble there, the internet blew up at that point. So I just felt like this was the next logical step of technology innovation, that of course our money is going to go digital. Of course it needs to be more sound than just having a server somewhere that like controls it all, and the idea that this could be decentralized and checks and balances across the globe with thousands and thousands of nodes, and then of course the entire thing brought to life by tens of thousands and now probably how many millions of mining machines around the globe. So it just caught on, and from there I just went all in. Like 2019, 2018, 2019, I was basically every single dollar I made, every single thing that wasn't nailed down at my house that I could sell, converting my life savings over into this world. And since then, it's been my life. Bitcoin has been the central pillar in my main focus, but I've also expanded outside of that in terms of passive income. And that I like anything that's going to pay me while I sleep, and then I can choose later what I want to do with that. And oftentimes, it's just waiting for the cycles, selling some of these other passive income sources at as high as I think it's going to go, and then hanging on to those dollars for dear life until the next bear market, and then converting those dollars into Bitcoin at a discount. So that's kind of been my story up until now, and I've happened to make kind of a career out of it, sharing this goofy, like nerdy hobby that a lot of us have found ourselves in. And it's been very, very rewarding and very eye-opening. And I feel like instead of learning more and kind of being overwhelming or not believing into all the hype that I discover and kind of taking a step back, I've only been drawn in more and deeper down the rabbit hole. And here we are today.
Yeah, mining in general really does that to a person. It's you dip your toes in, and the next thing you know, you are neck deep, and yeah,
Yes.
building things and learning, about HVAC and electronics, and how to rig things up in your home to your electrical panels, and to like heat reuse space. There's so much that you can get out of mining, and it all just starts from that single spark of curiosity, and it just has this amazing way of pulling you deeper. So that's a really cool story. So I guess you mentioned when you started to get into it, and like roughly around that time, people started to get out and say it's not worth it and capitulate. I feel like we're kind of starting to see that right now again, which is typical. We're sort of at the end of a cycle. Hash price is at the lowest it's been. We're starting to see a lot of those people just say, hey, this isn't worth it. You obviously disagree with that because you have a longer term strategy, right? And you're looking to, from what you just said, buy Bitcoin at discounts, take all-time high profits on altcoins that you might have mined, and turn that into Bitcoin in the depths of the bear. How do you see what's happening right now with the hash price being where it is, and why are you not being shaken out? Why are you not losing any conviction? And what would your advice be to people that?
Long term, the reason I'm not freaking out, I guess short term, the reason I'm not freaking out is because of the long term. I don't know. I feel like once you start doing a lot of research, you learn about this world that we're in, especially with Bitcoin. You learn about it, and you get this conviction about it. You get this belief about what it means and what its possibilities are. The longer you kind of nurture that, the more time you have while you're doing that, you're learning more about it, you're understanding it better, you're kind of figuring out where you believe its place is in the world. That the longer you're at that part, that reinforces your ability to withstand these moments. But because most people who like get shaken out during these times where we've dropped down, over 30% from all-time high, is because they don't know what they bought, they don't understand what they purchased, they haven't been in this space long enough to understand the volatility, which I personally have tweeted this a bunch of times, and I'm not original in this thinking that the volatility is a feature, not a bug. When you have a brand new emerging class asset, it's going to be incredibly volatile. But that's where the exciting stuff happens. One day, Bitcoin is going to be $1 million per coin. A 10 million, doesn't matter what, the domination in USD won't matter so much. So it's going to be so massive, it's going to gobble up all these market caps across the globe, that the swings will be considerably smaller. At least that's my belief.
Yes.
And so if you want chances to get more Bitcoin, you want to do it while it's volatile, not when it's fully stabilized and it's the world reserve asset or something like that. So, people just they latch on to, unfortunately, even people like me who make YouTube videos and stuff and who are in this creator influencer world, and they make decisions based off of what they see in videos and stuff like that instead of thinking for themselves. And so when things get tough, they get shook out immediately. So that length of time is what's informed this. But also, just speaking in the local right here and now, is lots of people who their current sentiment is that those are 4-year cycle. It's over. Bitcoin hit 126,000. Congratulations, that was cool. We're going to go into a bear market now, and then another 4 years after the next halving, get back up there to those true highs. And I think the cycle is broken at this point. I think because of, for better or worse, the Black Rocks of the world, the strategies of the world, institutions are here. I'm not going to argue that it's good for Bitcoin or that we need it, or that's bad for Bitcoin or we don't need it. It doesn't matter. They're here. It's this happening. So we just have to deal with it and understand what that means for Bitcoin. And my mind, it means that the rules have completely changed. The cycle has completely changed. So I'm looking to 2026 as that's going to be, Bitcoin for this part of the cycle, that it's time in the sun, where it starts to shine and we see new all-time highs. So shorter term, it's easy for me to be bullish on X because I'm like, 2026 is going to be like a banger of a year. I'm ready to, see this thing shoot even higher. But long term, it's like, well, as long as I'm stacking more, I know what the long-term outcome of this game is. And so I don't care what the price of Bitcoin is. If I can still accumulate some before it reaches those in macro eating level, world ownership kind of levels, right, I'm happy.
That makes a lot of sense. A lot of really good stuff there. One is what you said about people, I call them tourists, right, that are there. They haven't really studied. There's not a lot of conviction. Yeah. For every video that you make that might be informative and useful in calming them down, there's 10 with clickbaity titles and fear-mongering. And so when panic does set in and they don't truly understand the asset that they hold on a proper time frame, proper time preference, they go to YouTube or they go to X and they get in whatever echo chamber, bullish or bearish, to sort of comfort them or deepen their belief in something that they didn't think of themselves, right? So you can always, for every good piece of information out there that you or I might provide, there is 10 that are saying, hey, it's all over, your machines are worthless, Bitcoin's going to zero. So yeah, it's that is the dichotomy of being in this space. But I think you're spot on. This is when you want to capture that volatility, because as Bitcoin eats the world, those swings are going to be less and less violent, and it's going to be more of a slow, steady grind up and to the right over time, which is still fantastic for preserving wealth, but not necessarily for creating wealth at that point, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like if your goal is no matter what, if you're taking some of your dollars and you're converting them to Bitcoin, you're winning. But the days of taking your dollars and putting into Bitcoin to then where you're going to be set for life, those days are becoming fewer and fewer. Just because as Bitcoin climbs in price in terms of US dollars, $126,000 all-time high. How many people in the world can afford to drop $126,000 to get one full Bitcoin? It's the number is exceedingly tiny. Yes, if Bitcoin gets to 10 million or more denominated in a fiat currency, then even having a slice is going to be valuable. But, much better if you can accumulate more of it sooner to then have even more of that buying power protection later. So yeah, I feel like it's so common that people take these moments and things are tough and they are overwhelmed or they don't understand what they're doing or whatever, and they sit on the sideline. They sit on their bench warmer. And the worst thing you can do when things are, when Bitcoin's price is in the dumps, when sentiment is low, when I look at the fear and greed index and we're in extreme fear, is to, the worst thing is to sell everything. The second worst thing might be to do nothing, because right now it's no, you got to be stacking, you got to be looking for opportunities, you got to be looking for some other asymmetric bets that could increase your Bitcoin stack before whatever this next leg up looks like, and it becomes even less accessible for you to get a bigger chunk of it. So yeah, I'm obviously in one side of the camp where I'm just stack what you can, as you go through life. But the other side is when you get handed a gift, grab that gift and unwrap it as soon as possible.
Oh, beautifully said. And, to your point, people are always most bullish at the top and most bearish at the bottom when they should be most bullish at the bottom. And I'm with you 1,000%. Like, you got to change your psychology, and trading, whether you're a trader or you're a miner or you're just an investor, value investor, you really need to battle your human psychology and say, hey, when everybody's freaking out, there's blood on the streets. I believe it was Buffett that always said that, that's when you want to be buying and positioning yourself for the long term, so I think mining really does teach you that, because the margins are what they are and the cost of investment to get involved is what it is. And so it kind of teaches you to increase your time preference, right, to a longer time horizon. Yeah, to your point, there's not a lot, I should say, of people that can go and buy a whole Bitcoin right now. Very few. And the ones there's a percentage in that percentage of people that can, but don't understand Bitcoin at all and won't do it until it's 500,000 a coin or 1 million a coin. And then that group just shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. So it now is the most interesting time, not when it's $1 million a coin. That'll be something that we all think is inevitable if we're Bitcoiners. But yeah, it's a very small club, and it's going to be even smaller as time goes on. As people understand it, they're going to be racing to it. So it's we're all in at good spots. So you
Absolutely agreed.
think, Andy, that 2025 was the setup for a great 2026? Obviously there's two very distinct camps right now. One is that 4-year traditional cycle. It's done and dusted, and things are going to retrace. We're going to find our bear market lows, consolidate, do what we do typically, and then work our way back up higher. But you think you're in the other camp that, this was a setup year. BlackRock, institutions, banks, everything, they've sort of been positioning themselves. Lots of volatility, wiping out leverage traders, wiping out people with loans, people in strategy, all sorts of things, right? These treasury companies are getting smacked around. Miners are scared and capitulating. But you think this is all just sort of a tactic to get more Bitcoin, position yourself, and an explosive 2026 is on the horizon? Do you want to kind of dive into that with us a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, earlier into 2025, I would have been expecting the true fireworks to happen this year. But as 2025 has progressed, there's been a handful of things that I've seen that tell me that, just from, being through several previous cycles, that this cycle is decidedly very, very different. One is the institutional angle, which has been massive, which was very lacking in previous. But the thing that was not lacking in previous cycles that has been lacking so far is retail investors. I mean, where are they? Ask anybody who's been in multiple cycles who's in this space, like, have you seen retail show up? And the answer is, unequivocally no. Like, they just haven't been here. And that's one massive component that I think they will come back. That's just the timing isn't right. And the reason the timing isn't right, in the U.S., that, if you've been following the Fed's decisions and stuff, a lot of us were expecting way more interest rate cuts and way more capital injection at this point, but we haven't. It's been really, really slow rollout.
Yeah.
Quantitative tightening just ended this month. Easing has kind of started, but not really. The rates are still relatively high when you see, bigger cuts. If you look at the M2 money supply, yes, the entire M2 money supply is at all-time highs, but the year-over-year growth, the expansion of the M2 is still, it's like a foothill compared to the mountain that we saw in 2021. So 2026, in my estimation, is shaping up to be the year, because we're going to, Powell has said we're going to, maybe see one more cut, but he's about to be out. And then who's coming in is a guy who said point blank, like, I'm going to do whatever Trump says I need to do. And what Trump is wanting to happen is lower rates and inject capital, because, I don't care what political affiliation you are. Like, if you are looking at the politics in the U.S. and you go, okay, the Republicans are in power right now. When it comes to election time, do they want everyone to feel poorer than when they started in office, or do you want people to feel richer, like everything's more affordable and everybody's winning? Well, the answer is going to be B, and they're going to do whatever, whether it's actually good long term for our economy or not, to print more money. Yeah, like we're talking about stimulus checks again in 2026, which happened in 2020 and 2021. So I don't know. It's just looking like there's a lot lining up for 2026, where we're going to have big capital injections, lower rates, and then once all these things start to spiral and even more into institutional power comes into play, the price is going to go up. And what happens when the price goes up? If it goes high enough, long enough, crazy enough, retail is going to show back up. It's going to be full pandemonium all over again. And I think that's next year.
Yeah, and that's sort of akin to what we were talking about so far. Is that's why you position now when people think it's
Yes.
over. Maybe you're not full porting in, but you're looking to buy those value discounts, because if what you say even has a 50% chance of happening, you're going to be pissed next year if you did not position yourself now. And so, and then also to your point about sort of like the way that it's going to look. I mean, you have midterms as well in that whole equation, right?
Yeah.
To my understanding, and no president wants to go into the midterms with a failing economy or
Hmm.
a suffering economy and a workforce and bad numbers. And so that, plus the fact that like the system is built in a way that they have no choice but to print. So that's what they're going to do. If you have a nail, you're going to hit it with a hammer. All they're going to do is print, baby, print. And so it's just a matter of time. I mean, whether we're in a bear market now, which TA, from a technical analysis standpoint, things are looking like the cycle is over. But from a macro perspective, and all these things that we just touched on, the cycle looks very much ready to just
Yep.
expand and keep on going. We're on a knife edge and we're not going to know until we know, so we can only speculate. But I think in hindsight, if you look at the macro, it's going to be probably pretty obvious that there was no choice but to print money, and everything that you just laid out, which comes after that money printer keeps firing up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, man. This is awesome. This is great. It's a little bit more high level than in a different arena than what we normally talk about. We are going to get into the more of the Bitcoin mining stuff, but I think this is a great education for people that are maybe panicking or don't really have a deep conviction yet that there is a very bullish sentiment on the horizon. So this is great. You were into Bitcoin before you started mining Bitcoin a little bit, right?
Yes.
Okay. And were you always an investor in the traditional markets before you got into Bitcoin and mining? And were you always into passive income strategies, or this sort of sparked your passive income strategy love?
Yeah, this sparked it all. I mean, I was
Oh, wow.
when I was getting introduced to Bitcoin, I was pretty early into my personal finance journey. I'm very late to getting my personal finances in order. Yeah, I was part of my story I've told in my videos many times and stuff and on Twitter is at age 29 I had almost six figures of really bad debt and no investments. And so at that point I was just so like fed up with my financial situation, like living paycheck to paycheck and having no savings, no investments, any of that type of stuff, not understanding any of that. I just was a very late bloomer when it came to finances. I started reading every personal finance book I could get my hands on. And so I started like, okay, I'm going to get some index funds. I got my Roth IRA going. I'm going to have my emergency fund. I'm going to be getting out of this paycheck to paycheck cycle, get rid of all this debt. And I did all those things. But then right around that time when I got that snowball just started going, that's when I discovered Bitcoin. I'm like, okay, so this is the missing component. This is what's next. I need to keep doing what I'm doing, but dramatically shift gears. And then the more I went down that rabbit hole of Bitcoin, but then more broadly crypto and passive income, I was like, okay, there's something even bigger here that I can work on building that can feed this machine, and like continue this journey to financial freedom. And so, yeah, that's spiraled kind of out of control, and I am where I am today. But yeah, it didn't start with that, and yeah, definitely started with some of the more traditional stuff.
Amazing. Yeah, yeah. I remember before I really got into Bitcoin and understood Bitcoin, my thinking was along the lines of the passive income, the FIRE, financial
Yep.
independence, retire early. That was sort of my starting point for this education, which inevitably led into the self sovereignty and Bitcoin and everything like that. But originally, when I started looking at crypto, it was what can I buy that I can stake, which will produce more, generate a passive income. Now, what I failed to understand at that point in time is most of these shit coins go to zero over time and they get
Mm,
destroyed in bear markets, and they're not sound money and they're highly inflationary. And so if you're not doing what you mentioned of like, collecting them, selling them at the highs and then reinvesting it into Bitcoin in a bear, probably going to lose, and it's probably going to hurt, and you're going to learn some painful lessons, but that is the cost of tuition, as I like to put it. But yeah, that is sort of a very good point, is that like it's never too late to start this, to
yeah.
understand Bitcoin, to understand passive income. And let's face it, most people have zero education around financial stuff because the school system doesn't teach it to you. And if you're not lucky to have parents that are diligent and like really well educated in financial matters, then good luck getting that education. You really do have to seek it out yourself. So I mean, I think to start at 29 is really not really not the end of the world. And look how much you've been able to turn it around in a short period of time, right? I think that's a testament to the power of the technology and the things that you clued in on, and just your ability and your intelligence to see what was in front of you and radically shift your situation.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in like it's never too late as long as you start, and I feel like I'm a living testament to that. And I've seen plenty of other people who've also had similar stories. And yeah, and touching on the other point when you mentioned, everything stuff that is not Bitcoin, and there's lots of different camps of people how you view that. There's a lot of people who maybe you've never even touched it or just barely touched it and got burned, and now everything that's not Bitcoin is a scam or it's not worth your time or whatever. And like I fully respect that opinion, and like if you want to focus on Bitcoin and nothing else, like go for it, because that's still going to be like an amazing like outcome for you later in life. Then there's other people who see a little bit of the spark of opportunity, and they try a little bit and they kind of get burned. They say, okay, that's not for me. I've just been so hard headed with a lot of stuff. I see opportunity with altcoins and stuff that's not Bitcoin, and I just kept wanted to beat my head against the wall until I could figure some of those things out. Now I feel like I have to a degree, and within that, there's kind of two strategies that you can employ if you do those things. One is if you're staking, or if you're mining other things, like I mine Dogecoin right now. I mine a couple other things. I've got a bunch of devices that earn stuff. You can on the regular convert that to Bitcoin as you go, and just have multiple ways to accumulate Bitcoin as you go. Like with Doge, for example, or I'm also mining Zcash right now. On the the pool side, you can have it converted every single day automatically into Bitcoin, and you can sometimes outperform your Bitcoin miners depending on what those coin prices are doing. Other times, not so much, because they really fall apart in bear markets and stuff. But that's one way, auto convert as you go. Or what I typically do a little bit more of is I stack those things, I stake them, I stack those different coins and tokens, and then I wait for the bull run, and then I have my price targets that I think are reasonable. And I fully expect a lot of them to just not work out. A lot of them to just go to zero, even before the bull run or even in the bull run. There's nothing to them. But some will have the right combination of hype or whatever associated with them. And I can then sell those at my price targets. Maybe I don't hit them all, but if I hit some of them, I've just now accelerated my Bitcoin stacking process. But simultaneously, as someone who is a huge, lifelong believer in Bitcoin and what it stands for and what it is, I also am not somebody who is absolutely convinced that, without a shadow of a doubt, that for now, between now and the rest of our future ahead of us, that there's no other possible application for blockchain or a cryptographic technology out there. Has it emerged yet? I haven't really seen anything that's super convincing other than Bitcoin. There's a few little bits and pieces. So I do believe that like 99.99% of everything that is altcoin, especially when it comes to like meme coins, is pure degenerate gambling stuff, all going to fade into nothingness and to zero. Some of it outright scam, some of it people trying legit things that just didn't work out, whatever. But one day in the future, maybe there is something else. Is it going to be a sound money alternative to Bitcoin? No. But is there something else that's not related to money or currency or protecting your buying power that could emerge? And one of those things that I've seen is DPIN, which is one of the things that I'm one of my bigger passive income sources aside from Bitcoin, which is still very new. I just don't know what's going to happen next. So I view a lot of the stuff that's not Bitcoin as very much gambling. All investment has risk. And Bitcoin is considerably less risky than a lot of the rest of the world of crypto in terms of volatility and stuff. But some of the stuff gets extraordinarily risky, which is why I think it can be a really effective strategy to employ if you kind of know what you're doing and you have good risk management. But if you don't and you're YOLOing into the stuff, you will get hurt very, very quickly. And maybe that is a point where if you don't have the time to like spend digging through all this stuff, maybe you should just be focused on just stacking Bitcoin and not worry about the rest of the noise.
Yeah, it's a more sound strategy, because what I noticed with people that are more obsessed with meme coins or altcoins is that they're trying to get rich tomorrow, and therefore
Yeah.
there's very little research done. There's very little thinking done. It's not based. Their conviction is not rooted in anything that they can substantiate. It's just, I think this thing is going to go up and it's going to make me more money than just stacking my sats and waiting my 5 to 10 years. Inevitably, most of those people come around to being like, okay, I really should have just stacked sats and been humble and went to work and created a product or a brand online, and like come up with other passive income strategies. But on the flip side of that coin, if you have Bitcoin as your base, like you were saying, and now you're taking a few gambles in these
Mhm.
other arenas, if some of them work out, great, you've accelerated your Bitcoin stacking potential. And if they don't, well, you know what? It's not going to break you. I can definitely understand where you're coming from, but you've established a proper long-term strategy and a base to be able to take those risks versus people that ignore Bitcoin, ignore that sort of more sure thing, and they go straight into the degeneracy.
Yeah, I definitely, anytime I talk to people about this, like I can't like reiterate enough that, when I was doing this, I had a really pretty good base on Bitcoin first. And I highly recommend that before you do any of this, gambling or trying to get some asymmetric bets, that you have some kind of base. And then even then, it's like the problem with what you just mentioned that people do is that they see this opportunity to get rich overnight, and then they go all in, or they do a huge amount of capital into it, and inevitably most of it doesn't work out because it's all a zero sum game. It's very, very cutthroat. It's the Wild West, and you're almost always going to lose money, especially when you have that mindset and you just don't know what you're doing. However, if you've been mining, stacking, buying, dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin, you have a solid base, then you take 1% of your capital flow or something like that and allocate it to some of these things, or a very small percentage that if you lost tomorrow, it materially wouldn't change your life. But let's say that, the stars align, we get into a big bull run, Bitcoin blows up, retail shows up, then retail goes, they do this every time very stupidly. Okay, Bitcoin, I missed the Bitcoin opportunity.
Yeah.
That's over. What's
Let me buy
next?
shit coins. Yeah.
They go right into everything else. And so, yeah, there's like always going to be opportunity there. But you have to be like, you just have to be really, really sharp and really savvy. And if you're going into it as like a newbie, the only way you're making that life-changing money overnight or something is if you get exceedingly lucky. Like, it's probably better odds than the lottery, but not by a lot.
Yeah, it's just like it's very similar to leverage trading or trading in general, right? Versus being a long-term value investor or a swing trader. It's like if you're gonna trade with leverage, if you're full porting, 100x leverage, you're gonna get wrecked. If you're, if you're even putting substantial percentages of your portfolio into these trades, the market makers are going to wreck you. And so it's completely different than a strategy of, okay, I have 10%, and of that 10% that I've set aside, I only use 1 or 2% per trade. And if I hit the trade, it goes well, great, we're ahead. But if I don't, I'm not out of money, like what you're saying with these other opportunities out there. So awesome. Well, let's shift gears into some of the more nitty gritty and the mining stuff. I would love to know, sort of give us a rig rundown. What are you running? Are you hosting it with a company? If so, if you wanted to give them some love, let us know who you're hosting with. And yeah, what's your rig setup like? What are you running?
So I started mining Bitcoin a little over 3 years ago, in 2022. And I started with S19s, just pros, 110 terahash. Started buying some of those. Then I started buying some S19J Pro, 104 terahash. There's some S19 K Pros, 120. And then I got some S21s and now some S21 XPs. And I'm about to add a S21 XP Hydro. But right now I'm running 26 machines, 26 ASICs. They're probably spread across 2 or 3 states. I'm with a company called Musk Miners. I've been with them since the very beginning. Love those guys. Like, super great team, taking care of me and everybody who I've kind of recommended to them. And yeah, my strategy right now is continue running and stacking, Bitcoin with all those machines. But I'm about to add a Hydro, and I'm also looking for a few other opportunities to get maybe a couple more machines. I'm looking at efficiency. I want, super, super efficient machines right now, which is why I'm looking at Hydro, or at least like S21 Pros or XPs. But I'm also looking at machines that I believe will catch people's eye in terms of like resale value. Because one of my big thesis for Bitcoin mining, I've talked about this a lot on X, is one, once the machines are paid for, you're effectively stacking Bitcoin at a discount, which is super, super cool. But two, you have a couple of other extra levers that are possible to be pulled if all goes well in a big bull run. One of those is transaction fees. We've seen it previous cycles. Bitcoin flies to the moon, everybody apes into it, and they're transacting constantly on chain. And I want my Bitcoin now. I want to transfer it from the exchange now. I want to, send it to somebody right now. And transaction fees like inflate, balloon. And who makes that money? Miners. So you stand to make a lot of money. And also, like, some Bitcoiners hate all the stuff that's being thrown on chain, ordinals, or I'm not in that world, but I don't know what all the
You
things
said
are.
the dirty word.
Whatever the things are, some
Yeah.
people hate that stuff. Some people love that stuff. But as a miner, for better or worse, if you're on pools where that stuff happens, you also reap those transaction fees. So there's that whole world that we haven't really got into yet because we haven't had that big massive run that gives that. So that could or could not happen. That's one lever. The second lever is what I already alluded to, which is the resale value. Every single cycle so far that I've been a part of, Bitcoin mining machine prices from their bear market lows into the bull market always go up. Last cycle is a great example. 2019, 2020, or maybe it was like around 2020. I remember seeing people like Kaboom Racks. I follow their Twitter, but other places too, selling like pallets of S9s at like $25 to $50 per unit. 2021, Bitcoin's at $69,000. Everybody's trying to buy it. Everybody's like, oh, if I buy a miner right now, I'll ROI in 2 weeks. Like, I got to get this thing ASAP. It's going to be a moneymaker. Seeing those S9s selling, mind you, at the time, these are 2 generations old. These are not new machines. Even at that time, they're old ass machines, and people are still clamoring to get them on eBay for between $700 to the highest I saw was $1,200 per machine for an S9, and S19s were released for the first time just before 2021. I think in December 2020. You could buy them from Bitmain for $2,000. I saw those selling at like hosts like Compass Mining for $25,000 for an S19 at the peak of the bull run. So I see that says, oh, opportunity. I can do hardware arbitrage. People are going to want to try to buy these machines. I'm going to get rid of my fleet, wait until the bear market, take that cash, and rebuy a new fleet of machines for the next cycle. This might be the cycle where that doesn't happen. I don't know. But so far it's happened every cycle, and if we go high enough, there will be some value attached. And I mentioned, mining Zcash. That's a great example of how machines can be an asset. I bought a Bitmain Z15 Pro ASIC that mines Zcash. I bought it mainly to mine something called Pirate Chain, which is a fully private. It's got a very goofy community around it. It's kind of a cool little thing, just kind of for fun and to kind of talk about it. And then that machine became unprofitable after about a year. So it sat in my shed, turned off, unprofitable, probably worth a fifth of what I originally paid for it, which was around $3,000, $3,500. Fast forward to the past 3 months, I don't know why Zcash is pumping. I'm not a Zcash person. I've never owned it beyond this, but it blew up. It went from $30 to $700. My machine was making at peak like $80 a day in profit from a machine I had turned off and that was unprofitable in my shed. And unfortunately, I had a bunch of traveling and stuff going on, so I did not get to sell it during that moment. But I did rake in like $3,000 or $4,000 worth of Bitcoin because it was auto converting every single day at the pool into Bitcoin, just from running a machine that was long since considered dead. And so I've seen it over and over again, and that's a big part of my mining thesis. Is I believe it's going to happen with Bitcoin machines again. Like it has every single cycle. And if 2026 is that cycle, well then yes, I'm gonna execute.
Incredible. Yeah. And I'm sure that people were trying to kind of get in on that machine action because it's hard to find some of those older miners that were unprofitable are now profitable again, and people are beating people's doors down. Hey, can you sell me one? Can you sell me one?
Yeah.
It was just sitting there taking up space and getting dusty, and now it's profitable. And it's amazing what that does to revive the lifespan of these because what you said is an amazing counterpoint because you always hear, hey, these things are just money sinks, they depreciate to shit in no time. But you're actually saying the exact opposite. You're saying, given the right conditions in the market, these things they're actually more profitable than doing the mining in a lot of like in a shorter period of time, right? It's like the example of the S9s going for $50 a pop and then selling for hundreds of dollars, if not $1,000. Yeah, I actually had never heard that. So that's a very interesting counterpoint because you just definitely hear it's like cars that it's, you drive it off the lot, depreciates big time, and over time it just goes down. And people really do say that a lot about Bitcoin miners, but So you're saying in the right conditions, these things are great to sell off, and then your strategy is you reinvest the profits or the money that you recoup from that into buying up to date rigs, and you just repeat that process as new things come out and get more efficient.
Yeah. So this would be my first cycle doing it with Bitcoin machines. I
Okay.
just, I saw what had happened last cycle, so I'm planning on that happening again. But I have in previous cycles done this with like GPU mining rigs and altcoin machines. So I have absolutely bought it in bear markets and then sold it. I mean, I bought mining motherboards for $20 to $50 per mining board. Last cycle, I was selling them on eBay for between $400 and $600 each, just because people were like trying to get that hardware.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's again, I've said this many times on X when I do my threads about my Bitcoin mining updates and stuff. Like these are calculated gambles, but they're gambles. There's no guarantee that transaction fees are going to balloon, that mining machine prices are going to balloon as well, and that maybe unless you have like really super cheap electricity, it would have been better to just buy Bitcoin than mine it if you expect to outpace that investment. But I love the question mark. I love the variables that are unknown right now. So obviously, I've been I stacked Bitcoin. I've been buying it for a long time, just directly. My Bitcoin stack that I bought is far larger than what I've mined. But
Hmm.
I love that this gives me a little bit of a potential edge if those things do work out the way I think they will. And then, I get to report back on it and let everybody know if I was right or wrong, if the experiment was worth it or not. But at the end of the day, too, if I don't exceed what I could have bought in Bitcoin with the money from the machines directly, I'm still being a part of the network. I'm still doing something, supporting something I love, and it's a big part of my life. And I also, as a content creator, I get content to talk about constantly about this, the mining journey, which is fun. It's just a fun hobby too. It's just a fun thing to participate in. So there's multiple reasons why you can do it beyond the monetary. But yeah, that other stuff is very exciting if it's going to happen again.
And that content creation also generates a passive income as well. Maybe not
Yeah,
I mean, it generates an income as well,
yeah.
right? So yeah, there's something to be said for educating people. I know you have a guide out there, maybe more than one, not sure, floating around that teaches people about this. So
Yep.
there's so many things that come from mining beyond just does this outperform buying? I think having a strategy of mining Bitcoin and then what Simon Dixon always says, make sure you just have more Bitcoin next month than you did the month before. You do that over 4 years, 5 years at a minimum, and you will radically change your life. And nobody ends up behind. I mean,
Yep.
if they execute that strategy, right? So that plus just continually stacking while you're mining, I think it's a great 1-2 punch. And one thing I always like to say, and I don't think it can be overstated, is that the Bitcoin that you mine is KYC free Bitcoin, which for a
Mhm.
lot of people carries a premium. It's very important. So you're participating in the network, you're learning skill set that you can use to work for Bitcoin companies, you can produce education, you can teach other people, you can turn these machines into heat recapture devices. So you're offsetting your heating costs while you're mining the hardest money mankind has ever known. So there's just so many great benefits to getting involved past just the US dollar amount of Bitcoin that you're mining.
Yeah, most of my machines are hosted, but I do have a handful at home, and I have an Altair tech unit in my laundry room at my house that's purely there to just heat that space 'cause it gets really cold in the wintertime in the laundry room,
There
and
we go.
I get some bonus stacked Bitcoin out of that heating as well, which is cool. But something you mentioned a little while ago, I want to touch on.
Mhm.
Well, you talked about the misconception people have that you buy these machines and they just depreciate. Well, on the topic of depreciation, to the bonus or the benefit of you, like the tax code
Yes.
changed this year, and you can do 100% bonus depreciation on these things. So if you bought right, if this episode goes out in December, you still have however many days until the end of the year to buy mining machines. And if you are being legal with the tax system with your mining income and stuff, you can do full depreciation. I mean, talk to a CPA. I'm not a tax expert. I'm just recapping what I know from research, but I talked to the actual CPA about this, but you have pretty big bonuses where you can capture some of that value back immediately from these things, and work them into whatever strategy you want. If you want to put them inside of an LLC and do it all as a business, or what, there's lots of cool things you can do with these machines beyond just the fact that you are mining KYC, Bitcoin stacked directly to your wallet, even while you sleep, which in of itself is super cool. But there's some other bonus things on top of that that I think are very worth considering if you're on the fence.
Yeah, well said. Amazing. That is one of the sort of the punchlines of all of this is the tax strategy that at least in the U.S. seems to be very beneficial. I know Simple Mining, I think it is, on X, talks about that pretty much every day. They have a post talking about, hey, time is running out in this year to do it, but there is this amazing opportunity to uh, to have some tax benefits if you are mining Bitcoin or
Yeah.
buying machines. So, I mean, you got to take every advantage you can within legal means to be able to do all of this and end up profitable over time. So that's great, man. So diving back into the rigs that you're running, when you got your setup going, did you look into LuxOS or Brains? Do you let the hosting company decide this for you? Do you have an input? Sort of give us the rundown on what software you're using, or what firmware, I should say.
Firmware, just stock Bitmain firmware. Unfortunately, Musk Miners, who is a fantastic host, just because they also share some of their facility space with some other people and stuff, they keep it all uniform.
Okay.
So don't have alternative firmware options. But I have looked into several of them, and I will say, if I was going to run some other alternative firmware, Brains is super rad what they do. I love the, like, maybe Lux does this too. I haven't paid attention in a long time, but I love that with Brains, you have the individual chip level like optimization, which I think is super rad. Especially if you're going to run this at home. If you are somebody who's lucky enough to have electricity that's cheap enough at home to run like the bigger ones, you should absolutely be like tweaking those like crazy to get every ounce of efficiency out of it to give you as much
Yes.
longevity as possible, especially with the heat recapture part. But yeah, I just run stock on mine.
Yeah, no, well said. It's a big thing in the heat punk community where, trying to get these things as efficient as possible, and these aftermarket firmwares or third-party firmwares really do allow for so much great tuning to
Mhm.
be done, and optimization, which is, very important. Margins can be small when you're mining at home. If, electricity costs can be a little bit variable and crazy, and these firmwares really allow you to optimize for that. So it's cool that you're at least aware of them. I actually just read an amazing report from Luxor about LuxOS that came out. It's about 40 or 47 pages. Just came out last week. Highly recommend you yourself read it. I think you'll love it. And anybody listening to this, if you are running an S19 at home or something like that, go and check this report out from Luxor. What you can do to optimize your device, your units, and become more profitable when you're otherwise going to be shutting down your rig because it's not
Mhm.
profitable. It's amazing technology, and I think it's only going to continue to get better. So, really good stuff that you can dig into there on that LuxOS report.
Super cool.
Awesome, man. So, what kind of calculations were important to you when you decided, okay, I'm going to get into this Bitcoin mining space? Was there any mistakes that you made early on? Anything that you wish you had known early on? And what kind of calculations did you run personally to decide how you were going to approach getting this thing off the ground?
Like I ran all the normal, I hopped on what to mine. I looked at the current, difficulty numbers and plugged in my hash rate and power cost and all that. And I did the normal, what is my ROI going to be? How long before I break even? But I pretty quickly learned that by and large, calculations like don't matter because
Mhm.
Bitcoin's price changes so rapidly. And as we've looked at the Bitcoin mining difficulty, it's just shot up like a rocket ship, and has put a lot of those when do I break even calculations just like thrown them out. So like one thing I have absolutely learned is you have to, like absolutely double check the reasons why you're getting into this, because if you put it on this like, oh, I'm going to break even in a year, I'm going to be making $6,000 a month for the next year doing this, you're almost certainly going to be disappointed because things just change so rapidly. However, if you have a working thesis or a working like rationale for why you want to get into mining, maybe you see some of the things I see, the opportunities, the variables that are exciting, transaction fees, resale values, stuff like that, the just price of Bitcoin going up and up. Or maybe it's purely like I want to stack a KYC free Bitcoin, and that's enough reason for me to be operating or heating my house. Because so many, we talked about heating a couple times already on the podcast, but man, there's so many, and I'm sure you've seen way more than I have, just like full home setups and stuff. You pump in your H, like there's such cool stuff. And then when I was at Bitcoin conference in Vegas, was that I guess that was this year. I was even seeing some water heater companies that have integrated
Yep.
Bitcoin miners in their water heaters. I know there's pool heater miners too. There's just so many
Yep.
cool applications to where if you're going to be burning the electricity no matter what, you might as well spend the extra money so you get something back, especially in the form of Bitcoin, because what better thing to get back than Bitcoin for these heating applications? So I don't know. I feel like it's interesting. It's like a fun intellectual exercise to go through the calculations, and I even did a spreadsheet where I assumed a certain curve for the mine difficulty increase. I was wrong. It went higher faster. Like that is a fun exercise to do, but ultimately you have to have more reasons than just the numbers today to get into it. But all that said, I will say that even despite some of the miscalculations and how rapidly the landscape changes, I was pleasantly surprised that in terms of U.S. dollars, I broke even in like a year and a half. My expectation kept flip flopping, and at one point I was like, "Oh, it's going to be over 2 years, maybe 2.5, before I break even." Well, no, Bitcoin ETFs were introduced. Bitcoin's price flies over 70, it dips down, and goes over 100, and then all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, I've made all my money back." And at this point, in terms of U.S. dollars, I've basically doubled my my mining investment. In terms of Bitcoin stacked, what I could have stacked versus what I actually have stacked, I'm behind. If I had purchased Bitcoin directly with the money at each of the different times over 3 years that I bought machines, and each month where I spent the money on electricity, I would have at those various times, which unfortunately some of the times I bought were when it was a little bit higher than we could, so it wasn't even optimized. It would have been like 4 to 4.2, 4.3 Bitcoin that I could have purchased directly with the money I poured into mining. And as of today, I've mined, checked this morning, it was 3.81. So
Not bad.
I'm not
Not bad.
far off.
Yeah.
But again, I think, I have to wait until next year if this is truly going to be the big bull run to decide, to see if I can actually outperform that direct buying. Now, if he had been just buying all along with that same amount of money instead of these odd moments I chose to buy the machines in bulk, I probably have even higher amount of Bitcoin stacked directly from buying. But again, I just don't know until next year, which is the fun of the mining experiment. Is you have to like wait and see what happens and not rely on just a number calculation because it's almost always going to be wrong.
Yeah, I feel like it's a pretty safe assumption, generally speaking, to assume that if you're dollar cost averaging, you're going to end up probably a little bit further ahead. But there are so many great benefits to mining, which
Yep.
we've gone over and over on this episode already. Which anyone who's listening is a miner, whether at home or through a hosted company, and understands that there's a different set of values, whether it's ideological or financial, that factor into all of this, other than just number go up technology and how much could I have bought. Even just having the spread be as close as you just described, I think is amazing. There's just a sense of empowerment about, hey, I'm doing this, on my own and doing it while I sleep. And, you don't have to worry, am I buying it at the high or buying it at the low? You're buying it at a discount if you're mining in general.
Mm-hmm.
Your Bitcoin price is at a discount. So that's amazing right there. Awesome. What do you wish people understood better about Bitcoin and then about Bitcoin mining and getting started doing something like this?
Well, first, that anybody can do it. Like you're wearing a BitAxe shirt. Like if you're a Bitcoiner, there's zero reason, absolutely zero reason why at your house you're not running a Bitcoin node on your own and you're not running a BitAxe or something. Will you hit a Bitcoin block? Probably not. But you're supporting the network and there's always a chance. We
It
see
has
people hit
happened.
more times than you would think. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And it's better odds than the actual lottery. I think with I'm making a video about the got a gecko axe here right now, and I also have a bit axe running around here somewhere. But I posted about one of these a few days ago, and it was at the time with the mine difficulty, I think it was like a 1 in 10 million chance, but that's every day. So you get like a 1 in 10 million chance every day, and that is far better than the actual lottery. But again, you're supporting the network, and you can run it home. So like that, bar none. Like anybody can get involved in that, or take one step up and get a 110 volt like home miner, like the Avalon Q or
Yes.
Altair has some great units, or you DIY one. You can grab an S19 and convert it to 1 or 2 boards and convert it to 110, even Wi-Fi, and make it quieter. There's some great ways to do that. We can run it at home and use as a heater, whatever. That's one step above, and then of course you can buy and host like what I mainly do. But the point is, it's accessible to anybody. Like I wish more people realize that this isn't some crazy out there concept. Like you can tomorrow, with BitAxe, spend $180 or whatever, the base BitAxe is, like get mining,
$100 now for a gamma.
$100. Okay. So you can be mining very, very cheaply, and be supporting the network and being a participant in this, this big money experiment that was started in 2009, like very, very quickly. Anybody can do that. So that's super awesome. But two, like I feel like the biggest thing, the biggest feedback I get when I post, especially with my shorts and TikToks and stuff, because that hits such a more general, broader audience who don't understand Bitcoin or even really know what it is, what a horrible waste of electricity. Like this, you're terrible. You're ruining the planet. It's terrible for the environment. Like you're an awful person. All the things. And to that, I have a bunch of responses, but ultimately, if that is the misunderstanding, it's just because they don't understand what Bitcoin is. And if they understood what Bitcoin was and is, then they would realize that, well, the US dollar consumes exponentially more money to only make you poorer and poorer over time. The US dollar's value has only been eroded since we took it off the gold standard. It's just vanished and vanished and vanished. And they just pour like gasoline into a fire, the world's energy into making this what is currently our world reserve dollar. So like it's a fraction of that, and we're making better money. And so, oftentimes I'm like, well, I'm making better money for you. You're welcome. So that's one thing. But also, there's so much like amazing innovation happening in the Bitcoin mining space. I've done several visits to facilities where they take flare gas and cap that gas and turn it into Bitcoin mining. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, when you have an oil site where you're getting oil out of the ground, the reason it's pressurized pushing out of the ground is because there's always going to be a natural gas, and it's a mix of things, there's methane and a bunch of other stuff pushing out of the ground. Well, they have to do something with that gas that comes up out of the ground with the oil. And like here in Texas, West Texas, you see all these pipes stuck in the air and just fire at the end of them. Because it's not economical for them to bring in trucks or to build a pipeline or something to grab that gas and then take it somewhere because they get it cheaper elsewhere where it's more accessible. So they literally burn it. And methane, if you want to talk about bad for the environment, methane is a horrible, horrible greenhouse gas, actually proven to be like, I don't know, 20 times worse than CO2 in terms of making our planet hotter by blocking out the sun. And what you do with these facilities, you cap it, you pump that through a generator, like 80 to 90% of that methane is burned and converted to CO2, which is ultimately better for the environment, and it's turned into sound money in the form of Bitcoin. So it's a win-win-win. People use hydro, people use solar, and there's all kinds of great ways to do it. But I just feel like there's a bunch of misconceptions that make this such a cool thing. Oh, and one more thing, just to say, when I'm probably preaching to the choir with your podcast, but like electric grids, like using Bitcoin machines to balance load electric grids, is like electric companies are jumping at this opportunity because it's such an actual need that they can say, hey, please turn off your machines right now. Now turn them back on. We have this amount of electricity needs to be burned, because whichever type of plant we're talking about generates power. It's not like a little lever we say, oh, 50% of power, 60%. It's like on or off. And if you do variable, it's a very, very slow process. So you need to put that power somewhere, and Bitcoin miners are happy to gobble it up at a discount. And then in exchange for that, when they say, oh, it's wintertime, everybody's got their heaters on, we don't want to push the grid too much, please turn your Bitcoin miners off. They go, great, done. And the load is stabilized. So there's some fantastic applications for these that are a net benefit for the planet and people that most people just don't take the time and bother to understand.
So many great points there. And I always harken back to just how beautiful Bitcoin is in its design. And Bitcoin mining. I always say, really, it makes me appreciate every single sat more being in Bitcoin mining, because when you understand the difficulty adjustment and all of these different variables that you just talked about, taking stranded energy, taking the sun, taking flared gas, and all of these different things that otherwise would be wasted or underutilized, and Bitcoin gives them that outlet. It's just like, there's just nothing else like it. And so it's just such a beautiful system, a dynamic system that really makes the world a better place. And so it takes a while to understand that and the intricacies of that, but I think you just did an amazing job of simplifying that and pointing out a lot of the ways that is a reality for Bitcoin mining. Well done there.
Thank you.
Awesome, man. Wow, I learned a lot about you that you do enjoy more than just passive income. You do enjoy the heat punk movement a bit. You are a heat punk
Mhm.
running some. Are you running an Erlacher at home or a Q? What are you running for your? You said in your laundry room.
The laundry room is Altair Tech. It's the heat pipe. What I forget what they call it. It's their red unit, the
Oh,
chimney,
the
bit
bit
chimney.
chimney. Yeah.
Yeah, slick unit. I have a Q as well. I like the Q a lot.
Yeah, we're actually going to be selling the Q at Solo Satoshi next year, so I'm really excited to get one of those bad boys in my hands. The perfect unit. I'm actually buying one for my dad this year, so he can have it in the depths of winter in Canada.
Yep.
It's very hard to convince him to start rolling his traditional investments into Bitcoin. But when I presented the idea of a space heater that prints money, it very easily got across the resistance barrier. And so that's the way to go. So yeah, the Q is while it is closed source, and a lot of people listening to this podcast are open source Bitcoin mining maximalists, which I completely agree with and understand. It is hard to argue at the end of the day against the Q. It is such an incredible device, efficiency wise, terahash wise, price point. It kind of checks all the sweet spots, and you can run it at home on 110, 120 volt. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's a slam dunk. I was when I saw it for the very first time at Mining Disrupt early this year before it was actually released, and I was just taken back because it's like, oh, this is finally a Bitcoin miner like for the masses more so than what we've had previously. And they also have their little the Nano, the Avalon Nano, which is kind of cool, but it's just very much smaller space you can heat with that. But I just love that we're finally we're starting to see some more consumer facing applications of this stuff that's more accessible to people because your average person is not going to buy a S9 or S19 and convert it to a heater with all the DIY. People like us who are nerded out about this and really in deep will absolutely. It's a great option. But most people just want something that's off the shelf. And this is like, it comes in like a box that looks like a normal product box. You're taking it the whole 9 yards. So I'm really excited that we're finally getting to that place with the level of adoption and stuff and understanding where we have stuff. And I feel like that's probably just the tip of the iceberg. I hope Bitcoin just keeps blowing up and people see that opportunity for products and we see more and more of that. And then more people like your dad, who are my dad, for example, I've talked to him endlessly about Bitcoin, won't own any,
Exactly.
but there's some cool opportunities where maybe they will dip their toes in the water to see how it feels when it's something that gives them something back, like in the form of heat.
It is really the killer application that I see going forward for the next few years is that if you want adoption, you don't necessarily need to talk to people about Bitcoin mining and like Bitcoin and why all of the reasons that we know and believe, because a lot of that goes over people's heads. But if
Yep.
you can tell them, hey, this is something you're doing anyways, you're paying for it, why not have it pay you and offset your costs, whether that's at home or it's in a warehouse or a business or mm, any number of things, right? We got people melting driveways and sidewalks. We've got people running pool heaters that mine. I mean, I think this really is the killer application in this sector for the next 5 to 10 years that will get adoption. And ultimately, adoption is what we want because that's going to help decentralize the network and all of those other important things. And it's going to provide education and a starting point, much like the BitAxe, the Nerd QX plus plus, which has hit a block, 2 blocks, I think, already this year.
Mhm.
The Avalon Q just hit a block a couple of weeks ago. And so you are seeing people that are potentially just running these as a space heater, or they're just getting some educational tools with like a NerdAxe, 6 terahash, 6.5 terahash, and all of a sudden they have $300,000 from that lottery ticket if they're solo mining and they got lucky enough. So I think it's just the start. I think it's going to be an incredibly exciting next 5 years or so in this space, not only with what we have, but what's going to be continued to be developed and put out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I guess a couple more questions in terms of pooled mining and solo mining. Do you have a mix of both? So at the facility, you're mining with a pool.
Mhm.
If so, do you have like a preferred pool? And then at home, are you solo mining with anything, or you're just strictly pooled mining?
At home, the bit chimney, I believe, is pooled with everything else. The Avalon Q is solo. My bit axe is solo. I have this new the Gecko axe I just got is going to be solo. So I've got a handful of those. I had a Nano. It's off right now, but I'll probably turn that back on once it gets a little cooler. That'll be solo as well. But the vast majority are all pooled. And honestly, I'm not like super loyal to pools. I've just kind of jumped around to where they've got a good rate or something. Like I was with EMCD for a while because they had 0% for, I don't know, 6 months or something. I was just like, I'm not, if I can not give up a fee, I'll do that for a while.
Of course.
But Lin Coin was another one I was using for a while. So I don't really have any pool loyalty. I don't work with any pools or anything like that. I just kind of jump around to wherever, and also just experimenting and seeing where I'm getting the most bang for my buck. Also,
Fantastic. Yeah, it makes sense. I think there's a real race to zero for pools, right? It's
hmm
to provide the lowest fees possible because competition in the mining space is very violent
cutthroat.
and cutthroat. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is only going to continue in that direction for sure, given the amount of money that is pumped into the infrastructure in the mining space. So that makes a lot of sense. And it's also cool that you have some lottery tickets running, right? It's
hmm
I personally pool mine with everything, all my nerd axes, bit axes, things like that. But I understand the motivation behind solo mining. It's generally what people that sell bit axes promote, because the
hmm
pooled mining is so little. But it just depends what kind of person you are, or if you want to have a bit of both, right? Do you want that sure thing coming in every day? Do you want that flexibility and that passive income dripping in, or do you want just great lottery odds over time, depending on how many devices you're running? So I think there's a great place for both of those, especially for the home miner.
Yeah, and with like a BitAxe or something, another application I don't feel like most people talk about, I think is such a cool little opportunity. If you're somebody who travels a lot, like put a BitAxe in your bag, pool mine with it, and then every time you're at a hotel, plug that thing in, mine for free, and stack a few sats with not having to pay for the electricity. And that doesn't matter what the profitability is because electricity to you is free. It's included. So if you travel a lot, I feel like more people should be doing that.
No, absolutely. We definitely do see people wanting to do that or like running them out of business where they have an industrial power rate and
hmm
you're consuming the power of a laptop charger. So is there really a difference between plugging another laptop charger in or plugging in a BitAxe or a NerdAxe? Obviously check with your company and your boss first so you don't get scolded. But I think a lot of people are finding that, they just stick one in their office and even these Avalons, I've seen them in people's offices. If you run your own business and you have a good power rate, seem to be a very popular move right now.
Well, the Avalon Nano, it looks like a little tiny space heater, and people at offices and their cubes will plug in little space heaters. And if anybody asks you, say it's a space heater, and just plug it in. Go for it. Stack some sats.
Absolutely, man. How do you go about planning for having events? Do you have sort of a cadence going forward where it makes sense to you other than just like where we are in a bull run? Just like the having play into how you go about replacing your machines, selling them off, and how do you sort of adjust or prepare for havings?
Really, I mean, I've only mined through one halving, the most recent one, and my strategy was just keep mining. But I definitely did. I was looking to buy some more machines before that happened, and I was like, I'm gonna wait until a post halving, and I got some pretty hefty discounts by doing that. So I think that doing some timing of purchases of the actual hardware around that, as much as around Bitcoin's price, because that fluctuates a lot and that influences the price of mining machines a lot too, is worth a consideration. One thing I will note about that though, with Bitcoin's price, I've noticed across the board, Bitcoin's price goes up, mining machine prices go up really fast too. Bitcoin's price goes down, mining machine prices do not go down very fast. They go down very slowly. So if you're somebody who wants to get machines at a discount, you need to be pretty sure and just keep watching the price and be sure that's going to be staying down for a while for those machine prices to kind of catch up, because machine resellers and the machine manufacturers, they want to make money, and so they want to capitalize when it goes up and they don't want to lose out on those margins when it goes down. So something to be aware of.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So when you go to do these discount buys, when you're trying to scoop up those machines for cheaper, are you buying them from the hosting company or do you have trusted resellers? Where are you going personally to find these kinds of discounts when they are there?
The host I work with, Musk Miners, to host with them to get some of their rates, they require you to buy through them because they make very little from the actual power and hosting. They make most of their money from just a little bit of a margin on the machines. So I've I bought all my machines through them, and I'm almost always buying new machines. And so that where I'm just having to watch the price and wait for good prices. However, through them or through resellers or whatever, you can absolutely get used machines and stuff like that. And that's where the bigger swings in price is gonna be absolutely found. And in that case, I don't really have any, because I haven't really done much of that myself. But there's other people out there who you can follow and see where they recommend. One of my good friends, the Hobbyist Miner, he does a ton of Bitcoin mining at home in sheds and stuff, which if you've never had him on the podcast, you should definitely bring him on. He has a bunch of, like, a whole list of resellers. You can go check out his YouTube channel and stuff like that.
I love his mining shed. I've been watching a few of his
Super cool.
episodes recently. I'm like, man, that's every man's dream, especially
Mhm.
in the Bitcoin mining space. So yeah, that's really cool. What do you think, Andy, about the potential and the use case of what Bitcoin mining is going to unlock in other parts of the world? So maybe not in the US, but in Africa, Latin America, places with access to solar direct to DC, which is coming out through Gridless, and people like 100 Acres Ranch. There's sort of like this, in my mind, amazing opportunity to use Bitcoin mining to capture some of this excess or stranded energy, which we've sort of touched on already, but to bring it to farmers and rural communities and places like that in Africa and actually do some amazing things. Have you thought much about that?
Yeah, I mean, here in the U.S., uh, the view of mining from a, like, passive income standpoint is very different than it would be for many other countries. You look at, older unit, even with nearly free electricity. You look at a few cents per day or something, be able to stack that much in Bitcoin, and we kind of scoff at the idea. I mean, those who are really deep in the rabbit hole, they're like, oh, I'm just gonna stack more. That's great, but lots of people, the more general public, when they view that type of stuff, they kind of roll their eyes at a few cents per day. But you go to some place where a few cents per day is a massive, opportunity, especially if they have some solar set up or a rudimentary, riverside hydro, a more portable units, stuff like that, which is becoming more and more common. And you get a cheap machine in their hands when they don't pay for that electricity. You can stack a few cents per day, and that adds up over the course of a month. And now they've made more from this mining machine than they have from their whatever their hard labor job is that they were working. That's a big deal. And it's even bigger deal if they take a little portion of that and they hang on to it, and they see that asset continues going up and up and up in price and gobbling up more and more of the market caps, and they have more and more buying power, which gives them more freedom in a place where they absolutely not have that. Because even here in the U.S., you look at inflation, and labor prices do not keep up with inflation. It's even worse in other countries. So yeah, that's amazing. I think there's a couple opportunities there. It's one, like, how do we get those folks educated to this whole possibility and getting them hooked up with in all this? And two, for Bitcoiners who want to make the world a better place, maybe it's a great opportunity to look at your old machines, or look at highly discounted machines, and where can we send these to? There's other Bitcoin groups and communities that are cropping up around the world. I'm sure there's many organizations you probably already know of that do this, but I feel like there's just some great opportunities there to get this technology in the hands of those people and give them a taste of some real, like, the start of some real financial freedom.
Yes, I'm glad that we agree on that very much. I think it's a revolutionary act, a revolutionary forefront that is going to change the world for sure. Um, the Jua Kali miner just got released by Gridless. It is a fully open source, direct to DC, so these farmers can buy parts from AliExpress, and they put an old battery box and turn it into a miner.
That's
So I
cool.
mean, they're going to be making like $150 a month roughly in some of these areas in Bitcoin. I mean, if we can get the education around, hey, this is, just hold on to this for 5 to 10 years, and this extra revenue stream is going to absolutely reshape your reality. I think that's going to be a beautiful thing. Those places are largely held down by lack of education, corruption, and things like that. And there are so many great Bitcoiners, which I talk with all the time on my other podcast, the My Two Sats Show, where we interview people in Africa and all sorts of places, great places like Kenya, where they have these chamas, they're called, where they're basically like small groups of people that come together to help each other out, provide education. They plant gardens, then raise crops and bees and sell the honey off for Bitcoin. And I've seen Bitcoin Chama, for example, in Kenya, the amazing things that they've done through providing work for people and stacking those sats. And they have a whole economy going over there. So the circular economy aspect of Bitcoin in second and third world countries can't be understated. As you said, what people scoff at in the first world is a godsend in the second and third world. And these old machines can be repurposed and put to amazing use over there. So I'm excited to see how that all plays out in the next 5 to 10 years as well.
Yeah, super cool.
Awesome, man. Well, look, thank you so much for taking the time to share all of your expertise with us on the show. It's been a fascinating episode, a great time talking with you, getting to know your strategies and how you came into all of this and how you're going to approach it going forward. I think people are going to get a ton of value out of everything that you shared today.
Yeah, well, I hope something I said helps somebody or give somebody at least another idea for themselves to go do something. And thank you very much for having me on the show. It was a great conversation. Had a lot of fun.
Glad you enjoyed it as much as I did, man. Give everybody a taste of where they can find you on the internet.
If you hop on YouTube and type in your friend Andy, you'll find me. Hop on X now that I have the handle officially as of like a week or two ago. Your friend Andy. That's where I am in most places.
Oh, you got the official handle. It was Oh Hi Andy before, I think it was.
Oh hi Andy, yeah, because it was like a suspended account has had it this whole time, and I just never able to get it. And they finally started releasing some of those, and so I was able to snag it and finally have it.
Beautiful brand uniformity now. Gotta love it.
Right, right.
Awesome, brother. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Guys, be sure to share this episode with somebody that is new to Bitcoin mining, or looking for passive income strategies. Share it around. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Spotify, drop us a comment, all that good stuff that will help out the show and the algorithm. We appreciate you tuning in to another amazing episode of the Home Mining Podcast, and I'll see you in the next one.